Today on SUNUP, the wheat in your field may look like this, or this. We'll look at 2 wheat trials across Oklahoma and how the actual wheat plants compare. And we look back at the summer crops of 2012 and tell you how they fared. Then, can this crop fuel your car down the road? All that and more, today on SUNUP.
Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. The ongoing drought is definitely taking its toll on the wheat crop, but the damage varies depending on where you are. So we sent our Dave Deacon out to find the good and the bad. We begin with some of the better wheat we found near El Reno.
A few cattle dot the fields off I-40 in Canadian County, where we met Barbara Borneman and her cattle.
We have 32 head out here grazing on, I think that's about 35 acres here, and then we had 15 acres across the little pasture area over here.
The Bornemans have dual-purpose wheat in the ground, but at this point, they're hoping to salvage whatever they can out of this crop.
With it being so dry, the wheat doesn't look real good, but we thought we'd get them out here and let them eat what they can and just keep hoping and praying for rain and hope that it'll help. And if we get this ate off, well, then we'll have to sell them if we don't get rain.
This year, this is an exception rather than the rule. We just don't have a lot of wheat pasture, and that we have is being grazed down fairly quickly.
Come on, baby!
We're probably looking at maybe 20% of the acres being grazed with cattle that would normally have cattle on it. That's how low the numbers are right now. You just can't turn cattle out when they're having to graze dirt.
Extension educator Brad Tipton says some of the fields are actually green in this drought because Canadian County was able to get some timely rains. But looking forward, the future of this year's wheat crop is actually up in the air.
Right now, we've got no subsoil moisture. It's disturbing when you're out here and these farmers are digging fence posts 4 foot deep, and it's powder dry in that subsoil. That gets folks' attention, and there's no correction for that problem except the heavens open up and we get some rainfall.
We turn to Jeff Edwards, small grains extension specialist, for a broader look at the Oklahoma wheat picture.
Well, we've got a couple of situations. Wheat like this that was sown in October with the intention of it being grain-only wheat, largely laid into the ground until we got some rain in November that allowed it to emerge. It's smaller than what we would like to see. If you look at the above ground portion, We've got 2 or 3 nice tillers started, which is where we want to be. My primary concern right now with wheat that is in this condition is that we don't have much of a rooting system. You can see here where the seed was, and these roots have started right there out of the seed, and those roots are generally just enough to get the plant going, get the plant established. What we rely on is this crown root system. If you plant wheat early for grazing, this is the root system that has to be developed before you can turn cattle out on the wheat, or else they'll pull it out of the ground, and that is just starting. We have just some little nubs of roots that have started in the crown, and we really need that crown root system to get developed, to become a nice fibrous root system, to tap into some moisture that's a little bit deeper in the soil. It's getting cold, we're into December. I don't know how much more root development we're going to get this winter, so we're going to need some real timely rains to keep this wheat going.
Right, okay, so let's go take a look at some wheat in another part of the state.
Sure.
Okay. So Jeff, we've traveled a few miles north here near Marshall, and the wheat looks different.
It is. We were looking at an October planting previously. In this situation, we have September planted wheat. We got a little bit of moisture. It got up and going and was looking okay in early October, and then the rains stopped. and it really hasn't had any rain on it in quite some time, and it's going backwards in a hurry.
Let's look at the actual wheat here. walk us through this.
Well, we've got a few different plants here to look at. We have some that this plant is not dead, but it's not far from it. And when you look at these plants or this field from the road from a distance, you see these brown areas that look like they're dead. Most of them are not dead, but they're certainly hurting. We take this plant, for instance, right here. It has 3 tillers on it.
Right.
Normally this plant would have 8 to 10 tillers.
Wow.
By this time of year. So it hasn't set the tillers that it normally would in the fall. And the tillers that it does have, we have our main tiller right here, and that's the one it's going to hold on to at all costs.
Right.
And then 2 secondary tillers, one of which it's questionable whether or not that one's still alive. It's probably going to go ahead and slough that tiller off and get rid of it. If it doesn't get some moisture in the very near future, it's going to get rid of this one, and you're going to be left with the main tiller. And hopefully we could get some spring tillering, but there's some damage that's done out here.
Okay, now what we learned from the last one, the roots at the crown, how do those compare?
Well, as you can see, we probably lost a few of the roots whenever we pulled it up, but it does have a few roots at the crown that have been going down, exploring, trying to get moisture. In this case, though, in this situation, the moisture just simply is not there. So we do have some crown roots started, which is a good sign, but they've done about all they can do.
Right.
And when we have temperatures in the 70s this time of year, what little moisture we do have is wicked out by these roots very quickly.
Okay, now producers across the state are starting to see some of their wheat turning colors, kind of a bluish color. Let's talk about what's causing that.
They are. The blue color wheat, or you look at wheat that has a bluish tint to it, but would be one stage behind this in terms of severity of the drought. And what you're seeing with that blue color is really a buildup of wax on the leaves, and it's a response to drought, the plant trying to hold in moisture, and that's giving it a bluish tint. So that's wheat that is hurting, just not quite at this stage yet. Give it a few weeks with these warm temperatures, and it'll be like this before you know it if we don't get some moisture.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you that expert question. What can producers do?
In this situation, if you have this out there, there's really nothing to do right now. We don't know what Mother Nature holds for us for the next few months, so really you want to limit costs on this and not put any more money into it. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have some of the wheat that does have some moisture, has 2 or 3 tillers and looks okay, you need to baby that along and really take care of it, because that's going to be our bread and butter next spring, the way things are looking. But wheat that has not emerged yet, or that is really far gone like this, limit your costs.
Okay, well, Jeff, thank you very much. We'll check in with you later on down the line, see how the wheat's doing. Jeff Edwards, small grain specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. An oh so small area of Oklahoma had some rain on Monday of this week. A rainfall map shows just how small. The green streaks in the northeast corner are the few spots to have 3/4 of an inch or more of rain. The Mesonet Westville Tower was the lone site that had more than an inch. It recorded 1 39/100 inches of rain. The number of days since at least a 1/4 inch of rain has fallen are really starting to add up. A map from December 4th shows the green area in the northeast that had rain earlier this week. The middle of the state is colored yellow with 23 days of little or no rain. The red areas have just over 50 days, up to a high at Buffalo of 69 days of little or no rain. Little rain along with our mild temperatures has dried out our soils. A plant available water map from the surface down to 16 inches has a significant amount of the state colored brown. That's typically areas with a 1/2 inch or less of water for plants. We have to move off to the eastern side of the state to pick up green map areas with good soil moisture and available water amounts of 3 inches or more in the top 16 inches of soil. Gary, how is our December starting off?
Good morning, everybody. I hope you've had a great first week of December. I'm afraid we're going to start with that same old ugly drought map, so let's take a look at that. As you can see, no relief yet. We still have 90% of the state covered in that extreme to exceptional drought. Those are the 2 worst categories according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. We haven't seen those types of levels since about late September, and of course those have continued to accelerate as we've gotten farther into November and December. Now here's something interesting I want to show you. This is a snow map analysis. This is from Wednesday, December 5th for the lower 48 United States. Now, as you can see from this, only 7.6% of the lower 48 states were covered by snow on December 5th. That's the lowest amount for a December 5th in the last 10 years. In fact, it's only 27% of the 10-year average. Now that's important because as that air travels down from the Arctic regions, it has to travel over the land between us and the Arctic. So as it goes over those bare surfaces that are actually warmer because they're warmed by the sun, that air begins to moderate or warm up. Now if that was covered by snow between us and the Arctic, that cold air could really pack a punch and keep a lot of the cold air in place. So that's why as that cold air gets here, it's really not as bad as it could have been. For a bit of nostalgia, let's take a look back at a much snowier time. This is the map from February 10th of 2011. Now on that day, Oklahoma broke its 24-hour snowfall record when 27 inches fell on Spavinaw up in northeastern Oklahoma. If you remember, that's also the day that Nowata got down to minus 31 to break our all-time lowest temperature ever recorded record as well. Now at this time, 65% of the country was covered in snow. So bring on the cold weather. It is winter after all. And of course, those warm temperatures don't help the drought situation at all. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist, joins us now. And Kim, given the dry conditions we've been talking about and the potential crop loss, what's the market doing in terms of reacting to drought news?
Well, with the current supplies, the ending stocks, 700 million bushels, right around average for the U.S., just slightly below average for the world. You would expect wheat prices to be lower than they are right now. The drought, I think, has got the market afraid that we're not going to have much of a crop in 2013, and they're going to keep as much wheat as possible in storage. And to a certain degree, I think they're betting on higher prices as you get out into the March, April, May, June, July time periods. Of course, if it rains, then I think we could see prices going down.
Okay, let's hope it does, but we do like those high prices. You're looking ahead at Monday, a new supply and demand report expected. What do you think is going to happen there?
Not very much. I think with wheat, the market's expecting the ending stocks to be raised slightly for wheat. On corn, they're looking at ending stocks to be about the same, maybe slightly higher. On soybeans, maybe a little bit lower ending stocks. On the world, level corn stocks, level soybean stocks, and not much change in wheat stocks. So Monday, minor changes, but not much happening.
And speaking of not much happening, that old sideways pattern sticking around.
We still have that sideways pattern. We're on the bottom side of that. Like I said, if we get some moisture, we could break it. We're in a holiday time period, not much happening in the markets right now, and I don't think much is going to happen until we get out into maybe mid-January as the market is looking at wheat coming out of dormancy and to see how much moisture we've received in that time period.
Okay, Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist. And of course, not all crops are meant for food. Some are meant to keep us moving. Once again, here's SUNUP's Dave Deacon with that story.
At the Oklahoma Agricultural Experiment Station just outside of Chickasha, we found a harvester chewing up a field of forage sorghum. But this forage isn't for cows, it's for cars.
In this particular case, it's a forage crop comparable to an energy crop that we would envision as being an intermediate between something that allow the biorefinery to really begin operation till they actually establish a perennial crop that they can look at on a sustainable basis.
The research being done here by Hunke and his team is part of the BRDI, the BRDI Project, a program funded jointly by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Energy which stands for Biomass Research and Development Initiative.
From the very beginning of these projects, we're actually looking at a holistic approach, looking at feedstock development, the production, the logistics, and then the conversion technologies that actually make the whole system work.
When you're talking about this crop, probably the biggest logistical problem we have is dry down. When we go in and we cut this crop, especially in October, December time frame, it'll take at least 10 days, if not longer, for this crop to dry down enough to where we can bale it up. When we run it through the conditioner, we want it to break it open so that the inside of the plant can be open to the air. We want to lay that windrow out as wide as we can so that we can have a much thinner crop. We'll go through about 5 or 6 days after we lay the crop down, and we'll turn that crop and fluff it up some more to get some more air through that material.
The group is working on these agronomic challenges such as dry down and identifying which crops work best in different parts of Oklahoma, and also on broader picture issues like land use.
Well, part of our research is simply to identify what lands that we really need to maintain for food production. Then what is remaining, often called marginal lands, could possibly use for energy and also bio-based products. So we're taking a hard look at what we have available in Oklahoma that could actually be used for bioenergy and bio-based products.
All of which is something Hunky expects to see more commonly in Oklahoma, sooner than later.
We're ready in Oklahoma. We have our feedstocks, we have the production capabilities, we're now working on logistics, we have the various conversion technologies and modeling that really shows what the opportunities are in Oklahoma. We just need an investor or industry to come into Oklahoma to actually plant a biorefinery so we can move this technology forward.
Although we're a couple of months away from the hustle and the bustle of the spring calving season, which for most spring calving operations in Oklahoma will begin in late January through February and March, this, I think, is a good time for us to make sure that our facilities and our equipment is ready to go so that we can help that cow or heifer that needs some assistance during the upcoming calving season. First of all, on one of these very pleasant fall, early winter afternoons would be a good time to go through and check our chutes, our calving stalls, our pens, so that everything is clean and in good working order. Now is a good time to fix any of those gates so that we can do it in a nice day rather than under the pressure of a cow or heifer that needs help and we're having to do it in the middle of the night in the middle of the winter. Also, I think this would be a good time to put together a calving protocol, a plan for anybody in the operation that might be involved in watching cows or heifers during the calving season. Have an outline so that everyone knows what to do and who to call if help is going to be needed. And that, of course, includes your local veterinarian. Have that telephone number handy so that anyone can make that phone call and get the assistance they need as soon as possible. Also, I would go ahead now and put together my calving kit. In the calving kit, I would start with a 5-gallon stainless steel pail if I have one. And in that, then, I would put such things as some plastic obstetrical sleeves, a non-irritant antiseptic, a non-detergent dishwasher soap will make a great lubricant that we can use, and one that's pretty inexpensive. Also in that pail, I would put the obstetrical chains, whether you're going to use a 60-inch chain or two 30-inch chains, make sure that those things are clean, ready to go, as well as the handles for those chains. If you use mechanical calf pullers, having those right next to that pail is a good idea as well. Also, don't forget the simple things, such as a good flashlight, perhaps some extra batteries. And I would throw in some old towels or perhaps a roll of paper towels to help clean up while you're helping that cow or heifer at calving time. Getting ready for the upcoming calving season can help us save just a few more calves, and with the value of these calves and what they're going to bring next year, I think it's important that we save every one that we possibly can in this upcoming calving season. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Summer crops are out of the ground, and here to take a look at how this year went, Chad Gotze, Extension Cropping Specialist. Chad, let's get started. Let's talk about soybeans today. How'd the crop do this year?
You know, overall, with the tough summer that we had, they did fairly well for the most part. Several guys were able to harvest their soybean fields, so you know that's always a plus when the price is as high as it is right now. So,
well, let's talk about varieties. How do the different varieties stack up throughout the year?
You know, looking back at 2012, the later maturity groups, the maturity group 5s typically did better overall than the maturity group 4s or 3s. And that a lot of that has to do with you know, planting time, and then also where they were at in their growth stage when that peak stress came, you know, into July and early August when we were well over 100. So it really just came down to most of those maturity group 5s were still in vegetative growth phases, which soybeans can handle a tremendous amount of stress in those vegetative growth stages. So they were better positioned just because of their life cycle or their maturity length to handle that stress. So.
Okay. Now, another crop that's of interest here, you know, kind of an up-and-comer is sesame. How'd that do this year?
You know, same thing. In a lot of areas, it withstood the heat and the lack of rainfall. And we've had several guys that have harvested, you know, had successful harvests this fall. So definitely another option. And we really just need you know, if we just get a little bit of rain during July and early August, you know, we'd be setting for a really good crop with sesame.
Okay. Now, as we look ahead to 2013, of course, we don't know if that rain's going to come next year or not. But what are some things producers should be thinking about, planning for? Any kind of news you've got from the research?
You know, really, this is the perfect time of year. You know, once we get the variety trial results published and summarized, you know, sit back at the end of this year and look back and just evaluate, you know, what could have I done wrong or what could I have done differently? Planting date, variety selection, fertility, weed control, things like that. Sit back and say, kind of develop a plan for next year. And really that all starts with variety selection. So look back the last 2 or 3 years where we have data, you know, to pinpoint that variety trial and the responses, and pick a variety that's in the top group, you know, the yielding group. And then one of the big things is diversity. You know, we always talk about, you know, variety diversity, crop diversity, things like that. You know, when we have summers like we do the last 2 years, you never know which maturity group for soybeans is going to be the best. So, you know, plant a certain percentage of your acres to maturity group 4, and then on a few acres going with that maturity group 5. So at least you have some of your acres that are going to be that best ideal variety for that year.
Right, and stagger it for that. All right, well, that's good information. As always, Chad Gotze, our Extension Cropping Specialist. And if you'd like to take a look at some of the research and some of the data collected this year, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Well, we're getting closer to the end of 2012, and a lot of Oklahoma producers want to know, what about the demand in 2012?
Well, as we finish up the year, we don't think of, you know, the holiday season as being a strong beef time or beef demand time of year.
Right.
But normally we don't see actually beef prices fall a great deal at the end of the year, and that's because there's a seasonal supply decrease that typically happens. This year, you know, we're kind of in wait and see mode here for the rest of December. You know, the other thing that's happened in the last few years is we've had this sort of growing tendency for featuring prime rib on New Year's. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen that buying recently. We've seen some strength in those middle meats, and you know, that'll tail off here a little bit. So we're kind of in wait and see mode, probably mostly moving sideways here for the end of the year as we finish up 2012.
Okay, now let's talk about what everybody's talking about. Let's talk about the drought. What if the drought persists? Are we going to see cattle selling off?
Well, you know, we will see continued liquidation if we go into 2013. And one of the questions I get from a demand standpoint from producers, we know we're going to see inevitably a significant decrease in beef production in 2013. And the question is, you know, what will happen to demand? Will people just quit buying beef? And the answer, of course, is they won't quit buying exactly, but it will have an impact on the timing of things. If we have drought, you know, we'll see more cows liquidated. We won't be retaining heifers. And so those two things will moderate moderate the decrease in production in 2013. And it won't lead to a decrease in beef prices. It will simply take some of the pressure off on how fast prices need to go up. On the other hand, if we have more normal weather and some moisture, we won't see those cow liquidations. We will begin, at least in the second half of the year, to retain some heifers. And so we're going to really see the full effects of the decreasing supplies that we know are coming at us. It's not really a question of whether we'll have higher prices, it's a question of how much higher and how quickly we will get into that.
Okay, well, you kind of alluded to it. Let's talk about, say it rains tomorrow. Say we get 3 inches of rain tomorrow and all the wheat pasture greens up, everything's great. Let's talk about what happens if that happens.
Well, in the short run, we're really late enough now. I'm not sure the wheat pasture at this point would be most useful probably to cow-calf producers to help them get through the winter. Those rains would have to include enough rain to rebuild some water supplies, and that's really the most critical factor here for the winter. But that would certainly set up then, the beginnings of, call it herd stabilization in 2012 or 2013 more so than real herd expansion, but it certainly would set the stage and we would begin to see some of those expansionary kinds of things take place in the spring of 2013.
Okay, we're not talking rebuilding the herd, we're just hanging on to the herd we have.
We have to stop liquidating before we can start expanding, and that probably takes most of a year. So that's the best we could hope for in 2013.
Okay, thank you very much. Daryl Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Thanks so much for watching SUNUP. Remember, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.